All right, so we're going to stick with the questions here. I haven't seen these questions before. The candidates, I've been assured not seen the questions before. So we have, we'd like to start by giving each of you, Aaron Goldstein and Dick Mell, just 2 minutes to just say hello and maybe make an opening statement and just greet the crowd. Again, we want to get to know you a little bit better. Aaron, let's go ahead and start with you. Welcome.
Can y'all hear me okay? No mic? What? On the what'd you say?
On the microphone, there's a switch.
Ah, yeah.
There's the on switch.
Can you hear me okay?
No.
You know what? Don't worry about it.
You have a hand on my microphone?
No, go for it.
I'm the singer too, so if in awkward silences, I'm just going to bust out into song.
Mark,
and I will
Mark,
take.
please hurry up. He's going to start singing.
Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that one's on.
How y'all doing? Stay in one place. Okay. Is this a good place? Okay, we're good. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. Thank you to all the community organizations that set this up. Really, this is about participation, right? If we don't have participation, our democracy fails. If we have participation, our democracy thrives. And what does a committeeman do? What's at stake here? Our democracy. What's so important about participation and the importance of a strong democracy? If you have an election that you're not sure the results are actually accurate, do you believe in that democracy? If you have judges in the judicial system that aren't qualified, you don't have a democracy. That's what's at stake here, and that's why I'm running. So we're going to hear a lot, and we're going to go over the questions. I have a Ponce family, and we have another strong family. I'm surrounded by very strong families here, I see. But it's bigger than that. It's important that we have a fair process. So what does a committeeman do? It can appoint election judges to make sure that elections are run fairly, to make sure all the shenanigans that we see all the time in the 33rd Ward don't happen. What else does it do? Make sure that participation is at an elevated rate. When you feel that that election result was not a fair result, was not a true result, you don't believe in your democracy. So what else do we have, and what else can a committeeman do? Raise the participation rates, voter turnout at an all-time low. That's the committeeman's job. Also, and I'll wrap up with this, judges. Judges in the judicial system, where so many crucial things, decisions are made every single day. Judges are slated by committeemen, and that's crucial. And that's why we're here, and that's why I'm running for committeeman. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron.
My wire. I'll stay right here.
Thank you very much.
I think I'm on. I'm glad Aaron mentioned judges. I'm very, very proud of the judges that the 33rd Ward is back. Matter of fact, one I think that Aaron, in fact, practiced before, Kathy Pantley, comes from our community and is one of them. I'm very happy that I was instrumental in slating more women judges than most any other committeeman. But the committeeman race, the committeeman itself, has evolved, and I wish we had more time to talk about when I first became committeeman to where the committeeman is today. When I first came in, right in 1960, the Democratic Party of Cook County was allegedly the instrument of electing John F. Kennedy to the White House. The Democratic Party has now slid down to, as Aaron said, a turnout that is the worst turnout I've ever seen. Some wards cast less than 10%. Some of the wards along the city cast less than 10%. The 33rd Ward has always been higher than almost any ward in its vicinity in casting votes. The sad situation is that there's a turnout in Democratic primary voters. There are more independent voters today than there are primary voters. And that's sad. And Aaron's absolutely right that we've lost interest. One of the things that I'm so happy about as a committeeman is seeing Bernie out there, because Bernie is enthused a younger generation that normally is not even interested, doesn't even register. And the thing that's really disturbing is that 7 of the electorate, 50% of the people who are eligible to vote do not register to vote. And of the 50% who are registered to vote, 50% vote. So we're sitting with 25% of the electorate making the decisions, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the future. Time is up.
Thank you. So that was actually, you kind of both touched on the first question here, so I'm going to get right to the second question, to some of the meat of this as we get to know you here. So Aaron, let's start with this question here for you. Please elaborate on the role a committeeman plays in ward polling places. What would be your criteria in choosing election judges? And I'm going to go ahead and give you my microphone here because I think this is the good one. Let's pass it right over. You can stay seated.
Thank you. So the question was about election judges and making sure that elections are run fairly. The most crucial thing a committeeman can do when it comes to fair elections is appoint election judges. Well, how do we have fair election judges? Number one, we got to train them. Now, the Board of Elections does do a training. We need a better training. We need to sit down and train people how to be election judges and what the law is. I've been a poll watcher a few times, and I've seen the stuff that happens. We have a couple of problems. First, the election judges, many of them don't know exactly what the law is. Second of all, you have a lot of electioneering. So the last election, you had candidates going into the polling places, which they're absolutely forbidden from doing, and electioneering. You had flyers and pamphlets and all these things in the polling place. That's not supposed to happen. Even if you're a good election judge and you're conscientious, and there are those good election judges, even if you are that, if you're just one election judge, you can't do it all because you got to be there at 5 in the morning, you got to leave at 8 in the evening, it's a full day, and you're trying to take care of all these things. Another thing an election judge can do is make sure the numbers are accurate. We had an 18-vote difference last election, and there is not one person in this room that can tell me with a straight face that they feel confident that was an accurate vote. Election judges need to make sure that the numbers were spot on. So we need to train them. We need to make sure that they're passing tests, that they actually are qualified. And third, we also need to make sure that people are incentivized to come and be election judges. People don't want to do it because the committeeman is supposed to walk around the neighborhood, supposed to recruit people and say, this is an important thing for our community. And that hasn't been done.
Good. You can hand the mic actually just right over to
Great. I'm glad you mentioned about election judges. I have right here with me tonight some applications for election judges. For anybody out there who would like to volunteer, we need election judges. At the last minute, last time, people are forced to come in to the community from outside that have no ideas. Carol is one of our election judges here tonight from PEEP. She is one of the ones that knows what it takes. It's a long, tedious job. So if anybody is interested, please fill out one of these applications. We are short, I think we're short 7 or 8 Democratic and probably 20 to 30 Republican judges. And that's atrocious. And so, in fact, I certainly believe that is one of the important roles of being the committeeman. One of the other important roles of the committeeman is being a conduit for ethical and ideas. For example, my daughter asked me, said, Dad, we were picketing the Cardinals' residence this afternoon. Would you come and join? That's when it wasn't a very popular thing to do. And I said, Deborah, I'm going to come with you, but you know I'm going to be the number one instrument of the television cameras, which I was. From then on, after seeing that, every candidate that came before the Democratic Party for slating, I asked them how they stood on equal rights for gay, lesbian, transgender, which was a very important for me because remember in Chicago was a very heavily Catholic city, and there was a lot of folks that didn't go along with that idea. I'm sorry, I ran out of time.
That's all right. Aaron, if you could take another 1 minute to either respond to Mr. Mell or to expand upon what you were saying before.
So we're in the middle of early voting. People have made absentee ballot requests, and we're less than 2 weeks away from the election, and the committeeman is asking for support to have election judges. The job of a committeeman is not right before the election, quite frankly, during the election, to make sure that we have election judges. The job of the committeeman is to be out in the community every day, recruiting, participating in the democracy, not at a forum where they're talking about whether you should elect this person. You should not be asking for election judges right now. That should be an active participation of this job in this position. So to come here a week and a half before the election and say we need election judges, that's too late. And that's not what a committeeman should be doing. It should be out there in the summer, in the winter, should be having forums, should be having these discussions, even about the issues that the committeeman talked about. It should be having participation of the community.
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Mell, if you'd like to take another minute.
Yeah, I think that when I ask about elected judges, I was pretty happy that the fact that the Democratic Party, which I'm involved in, is only short, I think, 4 or 5. The Republican Party, which it's not my role, which will be your role, is to get their share. So I'm asking if folks want to come in and actually sign up and maybe even vote, even take a Republican ballot. I mean, if they wanted to be a judge. So that's where I feel on election judges. It's a difficult job. A lot of folks don't want to take it, and it's not the easiest position to fill.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, so the next question here, we'll start with you, Aaron, again. When her slating was revoked, Circuit Court Clerk Dorothy Brown charged in the press that her $25,000 donation to the party constituted a contract to be slated and that the contract had been breached. Do candidates, quote, pay to play in the Cook County Democratic Party, and does this constitute corruption?
Yes, and yes. I have been going around and talking to people, talking to voters, talking to people in the community, and the going rate to become a judge is $30,000. In order to become a slated judge, you need to contribute $30,000 to the Democratic Party. Dorothy Brown, for all her faults, exposed that practice. And as you indicated, Dan, Dorothy Brown got the slating, got the endorsement. She was endorsed, and then all these things came out about Dorothy Brown, that there was a federal investigation. Well, the Cook County Democratic Party president, Joe Barrios, said, well, let's have a different slating. So they decided to have a different slating, and they revoked the slating for Miss Brown, and they decided to slate someone else. Well, what Dorothy Brown said is, wait a minute, that's a contract because I gave you 25 grand. And Joe Barrios specifically said, he could have easily said, well, that's just a contribution. You gave us $25,000, you're contributing to the party, you don't get it back. Instead, he said, we'll give it back. There's nothing more that indicates a contract for all my lawyer friends out there than saying, you didn't get what you bargained for, we will give the money back. What was bargained for was the slating. What the money that's being given back is, well, you're not getting the slating. Is it corruption? Is it pay to play? Yes isn't a strong enough word, quite frankly. And And it happens all the time. And these are judges and these are candidates that we are stuck with because of this pay to play.
All right, Aaron, thank you.
I think what happened, and what happens in the slating is that each candidate who gets slated is asked to help contribute to the mailings that come out by the Democratic Party. In fact, they do. Now, a lot of them do not actually give the money, but they still are part of the Democratic slating and still part of the mailers that come out of the Democratic Party. Is it the way it should be? Absolutely not. But the fact that the financing of the mailers and the information coming out about the slated Democratic candidates has to be paid by somewhere, and unfortunately, the Democratic Party does not raise the type of money to be able to offset the cost themselves. So they ask the people to participate. So the fact that Dorothy Brown was asked to contribute, everybody was asked to contribute. And if they didn't contribute, they were still slated. They were just asked to help contribute to the cost of the mailers. And so, in fact, a lot of them didn't. A lot of them did not. But they still are slated. Now, I ask you, one of the things that's very important is vetting some of the candidates who are on there. Tonight, if you get home before 9 o'clock, turn on channel on Fox News and see Judge Bates, who was slated, unfortunately, by the Democratic Party, who was not on my palm card, and I'm not certainly supporting him, but see his credentials and watch, if you have a chance, watch at 9 o'clock on Fox News. You'll be very interested in Judge Bates's opportunity to be slated by the Democratic Party. A terrible mistake by the Democratic Party.
Aaron, do you want to take another minute?
Thank you. All right, so let's talk business, okay? Democracy and politics shouldn't be business, but this is in essence what it is. Let's talk business. If you have $30,000 and you want to run for judge, why are you giving that to the party? Why don't you just use it for yourself? Why is it so important to give it to the party for flyers, for them to distribute it for you? That's asinine. That makes no sense at all. And when you are asking for the endorsement of the party, when you are asking for that, it shouldn't be about whether you give $30,000. Money shouldn't even be a question. This is our democracy. Participation is crucial. But what about money? Money to become slated, to become endorsed? How about, here's a novel concept. You're qualified. We believe in some of your policies. How about that? That should be the question. Not, can you give $30,000 for mailers? That is not democracy.
There's nothing stopping anybody who feels they're qualified to run for judge not to come before the slating. Just put their credentials out and run. Nobody, if they come before the Democratic Party and they ask to be slated, they know that in fact that they're possibly going to be asked to contribute toward the mailers. They don't have to come before the Democratic Party. They can just certainly go out and become a candidate and run. But let me just tell you, very few of you out there today know the judges who are running. You'll get into the polling place and you'll not have an idea. Right now, the unions have mailed out their list of prospective endorsements. The Democratic Party is sending out an endorsement. But there are some very qualified people who are running, who are signed up and weren't endorsed, who will not even have a chance. Because that's the sad situation. Maybe, ladies and gentlemen, we should look at not having endorsed judges. Maybe, in fact, we should have qualified blue ribbon judges, a committee to appoint them.
Mr. Mell, why don't you go ahead and keep the microphone here, because the next
Sure.
question, we'll have you go first here. This continues along what you're saying here.
Sure.
Specifically, what will be your criteria for slating judicial candidates and discuss the slating of other candidates.
Well, I'm looking, I'm not on the judge slating part of the Democratic Party, okay? So the ones that I participate is in the slating of judges for the 6th sub-circuit. And the ones that, what happens with most committeemen in the different wards, in the different 6 sub-circuits, they have the opportunity, it's like a round robin, they have an opportunity when it comes their turn to slate somebody that they know. I'm very proud of the people that I have slated. Kathy Pantley, Colleen Sheehan, Sharkey, who was a ex-FBI agent, are stellar judges. So that is the opportunity for the 6th sub-circuit. Sub-circuits were created to give the opportunity for minorities to have an opportunity to be slated more than they were in the general election.
Okay. Aaron, again, the question, what would be your criteria for slating judicial candidates?
The question is the same question for both of us, but I think it's different in this regard. When you ask me what would be my criteria, that's if I were to become committeeman. Next to me is a committeeman for the last 40 years. So the question is, what has he done for the last 40 years, not what his criteria will be. We can look at his past and evaluate it that way. So as far as my criteria, you need to be qualified. Now, how do you determine that? That's not easy. But we have several bar associations that evaluate judges. They do interviews. These are now lawyers that want to become judges. They do interviews to see who they've been against, who they've worked with, other judges they've been before, to determine whether they have the right demeanor, whether they have the right legal acumen, whether they have the ability to wear the robe. So I think I would rely a lot on the bar associations. That's number one. I would want to interview them, and money wouldn't be a part of it. The issue would be, are you qualified? Do you have the right temperament? Do you have the intelligence to do these very important things? Because for lawyers, we see judges all the time, but for people who aren't lawyers, who aren't in the legal system, you'll see maybe a judge maybe once or twice in your life. But that could be the most crucial thing in your life. We're talking about someone's freedom. We're talking about whether or not someone gets compensated for malpractice, let's say. We're talking about a pension to make sure that the contract actually is fulfilled on a pension bill. That's all decided by judges. So you have to remove the political analysis of when you see whether someone is qualified, whether a judge should be on the bench. And the problem is the entire answer and the entire tenure of the committeeman has been purely a political question, and you've got to remove the politics out of it.
Aaron, go ahead and keep the microphone here. We're going to move on to questions.
No, I like.
Oh, you want to respond?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'm going to ask Aaron, because I'm not an attorney and I don't come before judges. I'm going to ask Aaron what he thinks of a couple of the ones that I mentioned. Kathy Pantley is one of the judges that actually I had the opportunity to slate. Colleen Sheehan, I don't know if you've been before her, or Sharkey. I don't know if you'd mention what your thoughts are on those three.
This is not the time as far as who I think about particular judges. There's some good judges and there's some bad ones. I can tell you many stories about particular judges that this committeeman has slated, and I'll give you an example. So a few weeks ago, I was approached by one of the committeeman's representatives, and they asked me if I would get out of the race, they would slate me for a judge. Now, I could be the worst lawyer in the world, but they were willing to slate me to get me out of the race. Was I qualified? Was I skilled? Would I have the right temperament? No. You don't know that. You have no clue. But because I was a political threat, it was worth it to stick me on the bench so people's lives are at stake in front of me just for a political reason, to get me out of the race.
Dave, you didn't use your full minute there, so I'm going to give you
Good,
another 30
exactly.
seconds to respond to that.
First of all, I had nothing to do with that, and I do not know who he's talking about, all right? So that's one thing, okay? I'm happy to have him in the race, and I think it's good for democracy. But to slate him for a judgeship to get out of the race is unconscionable, and I would never have been part of it, or would have nothing to do with it. So that's where my feelings are on that.
Okay, good. Let's move on to the next question, please. And we'll start with you. Next question here, question number 5 out of 10. What are you satisfied in the current Cook County Democratic Party? And what are you dissatisfied with in the current Cook County Democratic Party?
2 minutes for that answer?
Yeah. You can split it up if you want.
All right, I'm done with the good part. Look, the problem is that in our local party elections, in our local parties, we think of Democrats, we think of sort of the national view of Democrats. And the problem is the Democrats here aren't Democrats. I don't even know what they are. Are they Republicans? I have no clue. But what they really are is about themselves, about how they maintain their power. The chairman of the Democratic Party, there's no ideology there. There's no views. There's no political philosophy of how we can improve government, how we can move society forward and move the county forward. It's purely of how you maintain your power. And that's what's so interesting about this position. On one hand, it's such a great opportunity to create and help democracy, to make sure we're all participating, to make sure everyone feels like they have a stake in this process. But on the other hand, it's very scary because you can use it to help maintain and create greater power. And that's what the Cook County Democratic Party is doing. It's all about their power. So there's some candidates I agree with who they're endorsing, but you just look at the process. Anita Alvarez, were we going to slate her? No, and now all of a sudden Kim Foxx. They can't even get that right because all they do is move from one embarrassment to another. So if it looks bad, okay, let's slate someone else, let's endorse someone else. But it's not about what they think is best for the county or best for the state or the city. It's purely about their power. And we need someone in there. We need a group of people in there. We need a movement within the party to make it democratic. And it's not.
Thank you. Mell?
I was one who voted for not slating anybody for that office, the state's attorney's office. And when they came back and wanted to slate Kim Foxx, who I may be supporting, I was against that at that time. I didn't think that anybody should be slated for that office at that point in time. There are several offices where, in fact, we should not slate somebody. We should let the folks have the opportunity to go out and try to raise the money that they have to raise to be. See, here's a sad situation. Today, there's not anybody in the Senate, I don't think, except maybe Durbin, that's not a multimillionaire. The cost of running commercials. You may have the best candidate, the best judge in the world, but if they can't get on television or they can't capture the media, they don't have a chance. And so the Democratic Party gives good people, and unfortunately, some not so good people, an opportunity to be slated and sometimes get elected. And that's a sad situation. It's unfortunately an issue where money is the driving influence. Everybody talks about subsidized financing for parties. It's absolutely true. Look at the super PACs, how much money they pour in these races. So that's the sad situation. Does the Democratic Party have a stake? They do, but unfortunately, it is sometimes all about the dollars that are raised.
Mr. Goldstein, you want to take another minute?
So we're talking local elections here, okay? Super PACs it's a very important issue in our democracy, but we're talking about local elections and local processes. The Democratic Party in the Cook County Democratic Party has a lot of power and a lot of money. The party right now can actually endorse candidates that maybe don't have the money. Maybe they're not a millionaire, but they're a good candidate. They can actually do good things. The Democratic Party has every ability to interview that person, do background on them, and say, we're going to put them forward because here's a novel idea. They're a good candidate. We're talking as if there's nothing we can do about it. We're running for a position that has power to do something about it. And we're talking as if, well, it'd be nice if we can do that or do that. I think it would be nice if we can do it if I can get elected and become committeeman. Right here is the person that had the power for the last 40 years. Where has it been? That's what we really have to distinguish here.
Mr. Bowley, 1 more minute, please.
No, but we'll go on to another one.
Want to go to the next question? Well, the next question actually has to do with kind of on something, and if you want to go ahead and keep the mic, Dick. It asks about your feelings overall with the current National Democratic Party. And I know this is a local race here,
Sure.
but I think,
Yeah.
we'd like to hear from both of you. Overall, what you're satisfied with the current National Democratic Party, and what are you dissatisfied with?
Well, for the first time, we all were excited
8 years ago when Barack Obama and Hillary ran. And it was a Chicago guy having the opportunity to run for president of the United States. And it brought a lot of enthusiasm, it brought a lot of voter attention. Right now, Bernie has done the same thing. Bernie has probably will not get the nomination of the Democratic Party, but will move the Democratic Party in the right direction. Will force the candidate who will be endorsed, which is obviously going to be Hillary, I think, pushing her toward some of the goals that Bernie has had that I think a lot of us support. So let me tell you something. I'm much happier with the Democratic Party than I am with the Republican Party, I'll tell you that.
So, as far as the national party, the National Democratic Party, unfortunately, because what the Republicans have done has gone so far to the right, they've created a vacuum that unfortunately the National Democrats have occupied. So as the Republicans get further and further to the right, the Democrats feel that they can occupy that space too. So not on every single level, and there's many levels that there's difference. But on many issues, unfortunately, the Republicans and the Democrats are too similar. And what Bernie has been able to tap into is the economic issues that the Democrats are failing the people on. So there's certainly disappointment on that. That's where money is an absolute crucial thing. You heard Hillary Clinton is speaking at big banks, and it puts into question whether you think Hillary is basically a puppet of the big banks and the big corporations. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. But it comes back to our race here. The faith that people have when you're taking money from an interested party, we're talking 6 figures to speak, that hits home with the voters. So do we have faith that Hillary will stand up on issues of economic reform, on raising the minimum wage, on campaign finance reform? Will she step up when she's taking money? It's the same issues that are here. Can you trust that judge if they had to pay $30,000 to become slave? Can you trust that election judge when it's appointed by the committeeman, and the committeeman has an interest in making sure that a certain result happens? Can you trust the results? And that's what we really need. There's a crisis of trust within the Democratic Party nationally, and we need to restore that. Obviously, as the national election comes, and there'll be the general election, with the odds that the opponent will be Trump, obviously everything gets thrown out the window because we have an evil we need to stop right there.
Go ahead and keep the microphone, Aaron. I want to get to the next question. Who are you supporting in the March primary for President of the United States, and why?
So I'm supporting Bernie Sanders for president. And I just want to take one step. The committeeman is, well, I don't even know if he's right, but I understand what he's saying, that the chances, the odds are that Hillary's going to win. I believe very strongly that you vote your conscience. You vote what is right. You vote for who you think is the best for the position. I'm not going to vote for who I think is going to win. I vote for what is right and what's best for our country. So that's number one. The reason why I'm supporting Bernie is he's tapped into an issue that no one is tapped into, and that's the economic issue. The Democrats have abandoned the middle class, the lower class, and the term poverty, poor people. There hasn't been a national Democrat that's even said those words in years. They're completely abandoned. And we have rising rates of poverty. We have a shrinking middle class. And Bernie has tapped in to that philosophy. We can pay for college education for everyone in this country. Don't believe the lies about it. We absolutely can pay for it. It's very easy, it's very doable, and it's the best investment we can ever make as a country. So those are the things that are very important to me. Those are the things that are very important to Bernie, and that's why I'm supporting him. That being said, Trump, we can't have that. We can't have that. So whoever wins, obviously, I'll be participating and voting for Hillary.
Aaron and I don't obviously agree on a lot of things, but we do on this issue. I also support Bernie. I think that maybe old gray-haired people should have a shot to stay in for a little longer, okay?
If I have my drum set with me, I do. I usually travel with it.
He is exciting, and he's not afraid. And matter of fact, he's got 27 of my dollars, because that was what he said his average fundraising was $27. He got a check from me for $27. Okay, so I think that in fact that he's bringing in fact a needed conversation to. Has anybody raised their hand out there saw The Big Short? Okay, does that terrify you? Yeah. Don't you believe that anybody making over $250,000 a year that worked for Goldman Sachs should be in jail? I passed, when I was alderman, I passed a ordinance with 48 votes that said keep Chicago running, where the big banks were coming in and throwing people out as soon as they took title. They had a family in our community with two Hispanic families in a two-flat that had lived there, one for 13 years and one for 6 years, and had their children part of the school system. And the owner of the building, when he in fact rented the property to the 13, he owed $120,000 on the property. And then the funny money came, and he refinanced, and he borrowed $450,000 more on the property. Nobody in the bank asked him how he was going to pay for it. And he walked on it, and the bank came in and gave them a notice as soon as they took over to get out. That's the scary thing that goes on in this country. Look at the companies in today's paper who had the biggest revenue, and it was all the big banks. And that's my fear as much as Trump is my fear. The big banks are my fear also.
You want to take another minute on that?
Sure. Oh, Ron, if he doesn't.
You got more?
No, I didn't know if you want to talk.
Money in politics is a crucial issue. Corporations and big companies, big banks being involved in politics is a very big issue, and we could take it home locally. Privatization is a big issue in the city, and it's a big issue nationwide. And I'm ashamed to say that the city of Chicago is leading the march to privatizing everything, and that really started with one very distinct thing that my opponent gladly voted for, and that was the parking meter deal. So in 72 hours, he read the deal and felt it was a good deal, and that was at least $1 billion shortfall. So now teachers are being laid off. Now people can't, their pensions aren't being paid because we're in this huge shortfall because of the privatization. So Bernie has tapped into that, and my opponent voted for the biggest boondoggle this city has ever seen.
Dave, you want to respond to that?
Guilty as charged.
I did, unfortunately. It came to us at the last minute. It was a thing to supposedly have enough shortfall money to be able to use. Unfortunately, that set-aside money was never used. What it was, it came back for the next budget and was used for the next budget rather than balancing the budget. They dipped into that money that we were supposed to have from that deal. So it's unfortunate.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Do you want to?
No, that's good. Sure.
It sounds like you were done, so.
Yeah, I was done on that. It's a bad.
Then go ahead and keep the microphone here.
Sure.
What have you learned, good or bad, about party politics from being involved in your own campaigns?
What I liked about this ward and what I liked about the people in this ward is that we have a ward that is probably, I at one time said that if you drew a circle around Lawrence and Kedzie in a 2-mile circle, you had, I think I figured out we had, I think it was 70 nationalities and I think about 36 languages spoken. It is truly America, and it's an opportunity to see some of the people that live in Ravenswood Manor who do very, very well, and some of the people who are just barely eking out a living, okay? So politics here, I think, is a microcosm of the whole city. I remember being in this same place with the lady from the Korean lady who we gave away 1,000 jackets, coats for the winter in this area. And it was right next to Ravenswood Manor. We did coat drives all the time in our ward, and a lot of them came from the manor for people that lived in our community. We do have a shrinking opportunity for the middle class in this country. I had the opportunity to start a company manufacturing springs for the automotive industry. My wife, in her wisdom, kicked me out of the company and made a real business out of it. And I saw what was happening. We were doing business with the big 3 automakers. And all of a sudden, I was a second tier. I was making the springs for the switch manufacturers. But I was told by my customers that I should look to relocate a business in China. And at that point, my wife became unfortunately ill, and we just got out of the business. But that's what's happened. Big business has driven the people. Just, I'm using my time, so take it away from the next time if you don't mind. If I do.
I'm keeping close to that.
Okay, thanks. Look what Chicago used to be. Look at what used to happen. If you were a tool maker, you could lose a job and within 5 hours find another company. Shaw Walker. I mean, we've lost Stuart Warner. I just can go through the areas in our ward that we lost good paying jobs where there was 2 people in the family. Right now, I can tell you families where the husband is working 2 jobs and the wife is working 2 jobs, and unfortunately nobody's watching the kids. And that is the crime of America.
All right, Mr. Mell, we cut you off right there, please.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Aaron, if you could take the microphone again. The question was, what have you learned, good or bad, about party politics from your campaign?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Oh, too kind. I wish we could go back 10, 20, 30 years and talk to the aldermen of the 33rd Ward so we could have made sure some of these things didn't happen to our ward. As far as party politics, the concern I have running my campaign and going through this campaign is that they are too much in favor of the incumbent, too much in favor of making sure they maintain the power. So anyone that wants to jump into the race and they have a good idea or several good ideas and they want to be a part of the process, it's just this instant reflex from the party to do everything they can to destroy that opponent. Whether it's try and kick them off the ballot, whether it's send nasty mailers, and I'm sure in the next forum that you all are in front of or will watch, you'll see and you'll hear about the mailers that you see. Not to talk about our next race, but Harish Patel is going through just absolutely ridiculous flyers, and these are funded by not only his opponent, but by the Democratic Party establishment. And quite frankly, they're racist. And it's despicable. It's absolutely despicable. If you have an issue with your opponent on the issues, say it. Say what the issue is. Don't say things that you know aren't true. Don't disparage that person, and then don't take all the money from the big party to disparage that person. This is a discussion of ideas. Whoever has the best ideas in the voters' minds should win. It shouldn't be about destroying that other person, and that's the problem of what the party does. God forbid a young person wants to challenge the incumbent and have a nice debate and discussion about those ideas. And then all of a sudden, hell hath no fury. The money and the workers and the slander that goes on to destroy that opponent is just downright offensive. And that's, I think, the real problem with the party politics.
40 years, never ever once ever mentioned, ever had a negative flyer that I've ever produced. Never once had a slanderous, never talked about my opponent in another way, always was concerned about myself. But also it's very interesting that I heard my opponent today say about how people kick people off the ballot, try to kick them off. He challenged my petitions. He tried to kick me off the ballot. He, in fact, challenged my petitions. It was a frivolous challenge, only to create me to hire an attorney to defend it. It was thrown out. It was a joke. But he actually challenged my petitions. So there you are.
Eric, do you respond to that?
For 40 years, he's been a candidate, and he said he always focused on himself. He focused on himself because he didn't run opposed. He ran unopposed because he would kick off the people off the ballot. Damn right I challenged him because I knew exactly what he would be doing. I knew exactly how he works. He challenges people, he kicks people off the ballot. He had to hire an attorney. The attorney he had is funded by the Cook County Democratic Party. Okay, he didn't have to, the poor committeeman didn't have to go in the kitty to pay an attorney. I withdrew my challenge, and that's what happened. So
it was a frivolous challenge.
It wasn't a frivolous challenge. I decided
Of course
to
it
withdraw
was.
I decided to withdraw it. How did you? Well, it wasn't a frivolous challenge. Nonetheless, I did challenge it, and I own up to it. And here's something that the Democratic Party doesn't do, is they get someone, okay, just like what your daughter did in the aldermanic race, you get someone that's not affiliated with the campaign, so it's just some random name to challenge that person. I put my name on that challenge. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I don't run away from it. Mr. Mell has not had an opponent for decades because he knows how to get people off the ballot. Of course he focuses on himself because he never runs against anyone.
Mr. Mell, let's move on to another question here.
Sure.
So, you know, the Mell family name, very powerful name here in Chicago. It's, you know, for decades. I want to ask, for those who have expressed concern that your daughter's the alderman, you're running for committeeman, perhaps there's a conflict of influence and conflict of interest and perhaps too much family in one ward. What is your response?
Well, this will, you know, be interesting because, in fact, I talked to Deborah, and I think, you know, I'm kind of happy with what she's doing. I think she's being independent. She's so independent of me that she moved out of the office that we had and really is on her own. And I told her, in the next election, I'm not going to endorse anybody. She's going to be on her own. She realizes that. She has to, in fact, to be able to stand on her own, and she knows that. So this election of mine, see, some people run for office thinking about 3 years from now for running for another office. That's not here. Deborah will run on her own, Deborah will win on her own, or Deborah will lose on her own. I guarantee here that you will not see the 33rd Ward endorsing her, 33rd Ward helping finance her, the 33rd Ward doing anything that she has to stand on her own. And so, you know, 40 years is a long time, correct, you know. And I still believe that I can do a good job, and I'm going to continue to try to do it.
Thank you. Aaron, again, I'll just rephrase the question. Are you concerned that there's a conflict of interest, that one family would you know, be from committeeman and alderman from the same ward, same family?
Just to give a little background on committeeman, many times the alderman is also the committeeman. It's typically a joint held spot, just like with Mr. Mell. Is there a conflict? I don't think necessarily in that specific context there's a conflict. There are concerns that I have. I think it's a bigger conflict that Mr. Mell's a lobbyist, okay, as well as his daughter's the alderman, as well as he's the committeeman. That's a bigger conflict of interest that I'm concerned with. That being said, as far as being a committeeman, here are some concerns I have as far as the conflict of interest. So the last race was an aldermanic race. I'm not here to say who should have won, who didn't win, or whatever. But what I did know as a poll watcher is the committeeman is walking into the polling places, giving candy and pizza and chips and sandwiches to the election judges. And on one level, that's a good service because the judges are working hard, they're getting paid very little, and you try and give them some food, and I understand that. But on another level, these judges now have to make important decisions. And they have to make important decisions about the daughter of the individual that just gave them food and just took care of them, okay? We think that they're gonna have the integrity to make the decisions they need to make, and most of the time they do. But why even have that air of conflict? Why go into the polling places? Why have your people, who are the same people that the alderman's people are, being out there handing out flyers, walking into the polling place, handing out flyers in the polling place? It's really the air, the impression people have, even if there is no true conflict, that's a big concern. So when you're the lobbyist, you're the committeeman, your daughter's the alderman, your longtime chief of staff's the state rep. Now, even if there's no conflict, even if we think they're completely independent players, what do the voters think? They think it's just a family dynasty. And that's what we want to avoid.
Mr. Mell, if you could respond, please, 1 minute.
Yeah, I think that, in fact, that the alderman today, when I first got elected as committeeman, there were very few aldermen who were committeemen. If you think about Richard J. Daley, he was not an alderman. George Dunn, the president of the county board, was a committeeman. The third most powerful man in the Congress, Dan Rustenkowski, was a committeeman. Very few aldermen were committeemen. Today, almost every alderman is a committeeman. And probably after this election, some of the new aldermen are all running for committeeman. So if it's a conflict of to be the committeeman and the alderman. My daughter, if she chose to run for committeeman, I would not have ran. But she chose not to be one of the same. She chose not to be, and knowing full well that I told her that I was not going to be part of her next election. So I think that committeeman and alderman today are synonymous. So if that's a conflict, the committeeman today raises money for his aldermanic races and also raises money for his committeeman races. So that's more of a conflict than having a father who is pledged here and will guarantee that in fact that he's not going to be part of the next aldermanic election.
Thank you, Mr. Mell. Aaron, if you could take Goldstein 1 more minute, please, to respond, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll just be real brief. There's actual conflict and then there's perceived conflict, and both can be as damaging as the other. If there's actual conflict, then when the elections are run and the people that are watching to make sure that the elections are run fairly and smoothly are the same people that are also in power and also on the ballot. So for example, who's appointing the election judges for this race coming up in 2 weeks? The current committeeman. He's also on the ballot. That's also a potential conflict of interest. The family thing, it's a perceived as well as an actual conflict. And what I'm so concerned about is these super low voter turnouts, and people don't have confidence and faith in the system that it's fair. And when we have a family that's basically been over the ward for 40 plus years, now people don't believe in the system.
If you could,
Just one second.
Sure.
Only the fact that he's talking about the low turnout, our ward is almost every time had a higher turnout than most every ward around us. The wards that really don't have the turnout are some of the ones on the lakefront, where some of the people just don't want to go out to vote. The next question, you said?
actually, we're just going to wrap it up here. If you want to go ahead and make a final statement, just maybe keep it to about a minute. Your final pitch here tonight.
Well, thank you for coming out. You know, what I've enjoyed about being alderman when I was alderman and committeeman was the fact to be able to be in this auditorium here talking about everything from dog parks to bailing out the banks to helping with ordinances that will in fact be instrumental in the individuals in this ward. But the committeeman job today, if my opponent thinks that a slice of pizza will have that individual take a chance on violating the law on elections, I certainly don't believe that's going to happen. But I love this community. I've lived here since I had the opportunity to come from Muskegon, Michigan, to watch the Detroit Tigers play the White Sox. And after the Friday night game and the Saturday game and the Sunday game, walk down, 5 of us fellas walked down Fullerton Avenue Beach because we went to a zoo and never had a zoo in Muskegon, and was walking down the sidewalk on the lake and saw a little girl say, "Margie, buy me a popsicle." And I turned and looked, and that was my wife. And you talk about fate bringing, I went back to Muskegon, Michigan, quit my job, broke up with my girlfriend, moved to Chicago, and never looked back. I believe right now that I'm probably one of the luckiest individuals on the earth. There were 2 things that created an unfortunate situation, that I lost the most beautiful, brilliant woman who ran our company and was the greatest mother to a disease called progressive nuclear cerebral palsy, which makes Lou Gehrig like a walk in the park. And this beautiful, brilliant woman, well, I just so rather not talk about any more about that. And then the other thing was taking a young man who I thought was charismatic and married my daughter and helped him become governor. And one of the biggest disappointments to my right now with my daughter and my grandchildren to see their father out of here for 14 years on I hate to say this, not being a crook, but being a goof, okay? I can't describe it any other way. It's sad, but if it wasn't for those two things, nobody had a better life than me to have I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I just want to wrap you up. Thank you.
Okay, I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, we can talk about Blagojevich maybe another night.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate your time here. Thank you very much. Mr. Goldstein, Aaron Goldstein, if you could make a few closing remarks. For 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Wow, look at that. We wait a little longer, I'll get even more, right? Do you have a 4 on that card? We say thank you a lot, and that's the common courtesy, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for coming. This is a small part of democracy, and it seems like a simple phrase, it seems like a simple word, but when we're talking about democracy with a small d, it's so crucial to our country, to our city, to our ward. And the question is, how do we want to go forward with our democracy? It's pretty distinct options you have here. We can continue on with the last 40 years, or we can break away from it. Imagine if everyone in the ward is part of it, not just the ones that got jobs, not just the ones that helped secure votes for the committeeman, but everyone's a part of this democracy. Imagine if someone who hasn't voted for the last 20 years because they just don't believe in the system, they believe it's rigged, and now they come and they vote. See, because let me tell you a little trick that a lot of candidates know, but when we have voter lists, when we go talk to people, and on these voter lists, we can see the people who have voted for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 ad nauseum elections. Well, who is a candidate going to speak to? They're going to speak to the regular voter. Why? Because past is prologue. What you did in your past is what you're going to do on March 15th, which means you're going to vote. So the candidate, in order to be efficient with their time, is going to speak to the person that regularly votes. What if we had twice the voter participation? The committeeman talks about how, oh, we're so much better than the surrounding areas. We're talking about 10% voter participation. That's disgusting. And what happens? Those 10% are the only ones that the candidates are going to go talk to. What if we had it 20? What if we had 30? God forbid, what if we had it 50? Think of all the new ideas that come into play. Think of that. Like, hey, maybe that parking meter deal's a bad idea. Maybe there's some things we could have corrected. Maybe there's things we could do better. If we had more participation, more involvement, more faith in the system. And how do you get faith in the system? You got to get people involved. Not just the people who are your buddies. Not just the people you gave a job to. Everyone. And you don't take advantage of the system. You don't have a senior day. You don't have a bingo day. And you give them food and you take them over to vote. You don't take advantage of it. You believe in the system and you have everyone believe in it. So we have fair elections. And then if you're ever in the judicial system, you have fair judges. And then you have participation. And that's what this election is about. Thank you.
Aaron Goldstein and Dick Mell, thank you so much for your time. We have a round of applause for both the candidates.
Thank you.